Our gospel reading is taken from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 25, and verses 14 to 29. Listen to whatever it is that the Spirit might speak into your life today in this reading from Matthew 25. Jesus is speaking here. He's been telling a series of parables, and he says this: For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, to another 1 talent, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made you 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who had the 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You've been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter. So I was afraid, and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master replied, You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I do not sow, and gather where I do not scatter seed? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Just in case you missed it the first time, I'm going to repeat one of those lines from that reading from Matthew we just got. To all those who have, more will be given. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Some of you think my job is easy. You hear about red letter Christians, the people who just want to read the words of Jesus, and I like that. I like that idea. But I think the people who say they're red letter Christians haven't read all the red. Because that's hard. That's tough. These are Jesus' harshest words, surely. And I hate to call your attention to this because we are a Matthew 25 congregation, but this is in Matthew chapter 25. It's not all goats and sheep and doing unto others. You've got this too. What is this? Maybe it's easy to be a Matthew 25 church. You just take from the poor and give to the rich. On the surface, this story has often been treated as a nice stewardship tale to be used when the annual pledges come due. And it is indeed that. It's useful for that. But like all parables, what appears simple at first glimpse, has hidden depths. Maybe this is a parable about self-fulfilling prophecies, how in some sense when we act out of fear and try to preserve what we've got, we end up losing even that. But when our starting place is one of possibility and hope and maybe confidence, we take risks that we don't regret. This is a story about risks, for sure. Those who cling fearfully to what has been entrusted to them will end up losing it anyway, because fear ruins everything. It ruins everything you've got. But those who riskily, if riskily is a word, those who riskily invest their life and their love and their energies into the larger world will benefit from it, as will the world. When we only play it safe, we're letting fear or apathy choke out possibilities and love. Love, to be real, has to take risks. So I told you a few months ago that I wanted to read every novel ever written by an author named Sigrid Nunez. I liked one of her novels so much that I just assumed this is a great writer. I found a new writer. I'm going to read everything she's ever written. Didn't work. Not that the last one I read was bad, but it just didn't live up to my expectations. It was about a dog. You know my relationship with dogs. More recently, I read her novel, The Friend, which didn't impress me quite as much, but it carries a very good message about suicide, which very few novels in this world are brave enough to tackle, much less tackle with such wisdom. The Friend is about a writer in New York City whose mentor takes his own life, leaving her to take care of his enormous and aged Great Dane. No one else wants this dog. It's too big. It's too moody. And Great Danes, they slobber. They're messy. The narrator tells her story without ever telling you what her name is. You go through the whole book never knowing the hero's name. Now, it's one thing to inherit someone else's dog. That's doable, I guess. It's a lot like buying a used car, which is the only kind I ever buy. You end up dealing with someone else's issues and discovering slowly what those issues are. If you've ever adopted a rescue pet, then maybe you know this. But when you adopt a pet and it's a moody Great Dane who growls at you and who is really big and who pushes you out of your own bed at night, it makes that adoption all the harder. She doesn't want this dog. She really doesn't want it. It violates the woman's lease to have a dog in her tiny Manhattan apartment, and the neighbors are scared of it when she takes it on the elevator and in the hallways. And the landlord threatens to kick her out. She has to get a letter from a therapist saying it's an emotional support dog. But it's not an emotional support dog because it's mopey and it's depressive. If anything, she's an emotional support human. This dog misses its former owner terribly, but the woman misses him too. And their shared sadness is enough to make them gradually, very slowly, turn toward each other. Slowly, they come to love each other and rely on each other. Their lives have been similarly broken. Why did he kill himself? Was my friendship not enough? Why didn't he turn to me? I would have moved heaven and earth to help him. It's as if both the woman and the dog are asking these questions, though I don't know how much dogs understand death. And in the end, the dog isn't a dog anyway, you know. The dog is just a stand-in, a proxy for the friend that she lost. And as long as she can keep loving that dog, it's as if she can keep loving that friend. It's as if that dog is somehow him. And not only does her budding friendship with an unwanted dog redeem a lot of sorrow, but it gives her joys that she never expected. She had to take a risk by adopting an unwanted dog, but it proved redemptive. Many risks prove redemptive, don't they? I mean, you probably know, those of you who've been here a while, know that my daughter begged me to take on a dog that I didn't want, and I love it. It's a great little dog. It paid off, even though I'm not a dog person. Long ago, I was called upon to take a needy child into my home when I was living in Africa, and that paid off too. I've never regretted that. Some of love's risks don't work out, but still love calls us to take risks, to do stuff we might not want to do stuff that scares us. if we circle the wagons to protect ourselves, then we'll be safe, yeah. But we won't grow, and we won't get to love as much as we're meant to. It's like burying talents in the ground. Love asks to be risked. Can you think of times in your life when you made a loving risk and it paid off and it worked? It gave you meaning and joy that you never could have imagined. Love, for it to be love, has to be risky. Now, turning again to this reading from Matthew chapter 25, let me just say, I don't like this guy. This rich guy in this parable, I don't like him. He, quote, reaps where he doesn't sow. Does that make him some kind of a hero, or does that make him a thief and a greedy person? And also, it's unfair for him to expect all three of his servants to be good at playing the stock market. Is that the greatest good in human life, turning a profit? Wealth management is a professional domain. Not anybody can do it. You can't hand it over to your three servants and expect them all to succeed. And then you can't punish a poet for not creating for you a diversified portfolio, whatever that is. A person might be an excellent chef or a pianist or a farmer without knowing how to double your money on an investment. It seems that the man is treating his servants unfairly by asking them to make money for him in his long absence. And it seems to me that that third servant might have actually been proud when he came in with only the amount he was given and said, here it is, I protected it, I didn't spend a cent, I didn't let anybody steal it, I buried it in a hole in the ground. He might have expected to be congratulated. Well, here it is, every red penny that you gave me, you get it back, safe and sound. And to that, the rich man responds, you're fired. But this is a parable about risks. How only that which is risked can grow and increase into more than it is. And as much as I dislike the rich man in this story, this is a good parable for life, where sometimes it seems that the big boss is on business somewhere and has confided much of the well-being of this world to you and me. You and I have been put in charge of a whole lot of things that aren't really ours. We can preserve them all, we can try to protect them and keep them just as we found them, we can hide them away and keep them safe, or we can take risks and invest them into hopes and possibilities that are worthy of them. The greatest risk of all is to take no risk. Love cries out to be ventured, to be invested, to be risked. Now, a talent, as you probably remember from Sunday school, was 20 years' wages. That's a lot of money. A talent was 20 years' wages. Of course, there is the old-fashioned reading of this parable, the conventional reading that you probably also learned in Sunday school, which is to treat talents as literal talents. And that's nice too. To emphasize our responsibility to put our talents to work for the good of the world. And it's true enough that talents are no good to anyone when we bury them and hide them away and neglect them. And in this season of Thanksgiving, when we ponder our gratitude, it's right to think about the way we're using the things that have been entrusted to us, or whether we're using them at all. Artistic abilities, good singing voices, leadership skills, a skillful hand at some musical instrument, knowing your way around a car engine or a circular saw, a long life full of years and the wisdom that they've brought. These are all gifts that can be shared with the world and with the community of faith. These are things that could be put to benefit for all of us. Our life's various gifts might get buried in a hole somewhere, but it's not because we don't care, it's just because we don't know how to use them. We don't know how to put them to work. I mean, you've got a few talents like that, don't you? Some ancillary extra talents that never really served you in your profession or you never really developed. My father taught at the Pittsburgh Art Institute, and he was always pushing me toward a career in art. I wasn't bad. He was encouraging in that way, but life pulls you so many different directions. And there were things that seemed more urgent at the time. And now that I see that old Snyder artistic bent in one of my own children and going to waste, not being used, I feel the waste of it in both of us. And it does feel like a terrible waste when you see it in somebody else. But when you've got it in yourself, oh, it's just so much work, it's so much risk. What if I don't do good at it? What if I fail? What if I put a lot of time into something that doesn't benefit anyone or make me happy? What dusty old talents lie neglected and disused in the attics of your mind or the guest room closets of your life? There may yet be joy and meaning in some of them, but you've got to run the risk of pulling them out and dusting them off and putting them to work, and you might fail. Risk. All good things in life entail risk, and love is no exception. You know what's interesting to me, though it has nothing to do with the sermon? It's interesting to me how each of the servants in this parable kind of gets the master they expect. The two who go into it with confidence and with hope get a happy, joyful master who says, welcome into the joy of your master. And the one who kind of started out from a place of fear and a lack of confidence got reprimanded, or worse, we might have skipped a verse. It's as if to say that if we live with a concept of God as one of fear, then maybe God will always seem fearful to us. But if we conceive of God as loving, then there will be possibilities and hope. Love always entails great risk, enormous risk, joyful risk. You know, the life of Jesus seems to say that love actually doesn't mean all that much until it has survived its own betrayal. Think about that and the life of Jesus. That seems to be what his life says. It has to survive betrayal to be real love. You think about where Matthew has placed this story. Luke doesn't do it this way, but Matthew does. He puts it right before Jesus goes into Jerusalem to get crucified. What's he saying about risk here? Playing it safe with anything involving love, but with the life of faith, rarely pays off. The world is bored with our safe religiosity. And so let me ask you in all sincerity, and I do want answers, maybe not at this moment, maybe throughout the course of the week or at the back door. Let me ask you in all sincerity, what risks might we as a congregation be called to make in these days? Religion, as usual, is not doing it for the world anymore. How are we called to be and do something risky, something new in our world today? Love bids us act, for the world will always need the kind of faith that cares about the world and not just about getting into heaven. And since every sermon is supposed to have 3 audiences, if you were in adult education a few weeks ago, you learned that. The church, the individual, and society, let me ask you this about society. What risks does our society need to start making? In this age of growing fears and old hates reignited. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a famous pacifist during the Nazi era in Germany who was executed for trying to get Hitler assassinated. He said that the great sin of respectable people is to run from responsibility. That rings true to me. That speaks to my conscience. The great sin of respectable people is to run from responsibility, to bury their power instead of using it to resist evil and create good. Maybe the great sin for you and me is to live as if our living just doesn't matter. Apathetically. As if we're not meant to bring about something good for our neighbors. Invest in the future of our world. Bring about something good for ourselves and for God. It's apathy. that buries potential in a hole in the ground. It's mere apathy that stifles so much of us in the end. A dull, droning daily grind that becomes all-consuming. Life is meant to be forward-looking, an adventure. The call is not to comfort. It's to risk. It's to passion. It's to hope. And finally, the individual. You in your pew, or you at home. Are you bored? I think most of us are bored much of the time. Maybe we're not taking the right risks with our lives, with our faith, with our love. Maybe there are faithful risks that you are being called upon to take in this life. This parable is a call to live passionately and to run a few risks lovingly. To do otherwise is to live carelessly, a life of simple drift, floating on the currents of our times. I don't know exactly what new thing our congregation is called to do in these times, but it's something, and it will become clear in time. I'm not sure what new investment we are being called to make as a nation, but it will be something moving us into the future and not the past. And I do not know what you are called to be and do as a person, but there is a calling, and it's all bound up in your loves. A joyful, passionate, risky, scary adventure to which you must apply yourself. Love is always risky. Otherwise, it's not love. It's time to take some risks. Amen.